The managers that try to control gross by managing gross ends up costing themselves gross.
I
They
like
try to
that.
control it, saying, "Hey, I'll make up my money on my fresh stuff." So they're trying to manage that money. They're saying, "Hey, I'm gonna raise my price so I can control my gross and try to get it." And they end up costing themselves gross because again, those cars end up bleeding through and just adding to the problem.
Don't wait around for the up bus. Get in the driver's seat and take control of your operations. Are you ready to increase profitability, have better processes, and get proactive with your operations? Welcome to the Up Bus Podcast. Here's your hosts, Jason Harris and Jason Rice.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? This is Jason Harris, joined by Jason Rice. That's right, you get two Jasons today. And this is the Up Bus Podcast. I'm so excited we get to do this together. It's like the highlight of my day. I'm like, I can hang with Jason today.
It is fun.
It's fun. Well, and not only fun, but I'm excited about today's topic. So, hey, guys, for everyone out there watching and listening right now, if you have any aged inventory, or God forbid you have a car that's about to have a birthday, please make sure you forward this episode to your manager. They need to see that this episode, because today's episode is all about the cost of holding aging used cars. And, you know, as I was thinking about this topic, man, I was like, oh, this is going to be fun, right? Because it's just going to be a fun conversation, because I just, you know, how many times I've personally done this myself, Jason. I will be the first one to admit I held on to something I wasn't supposed to, you know, because I actually remember the car. It was a 2007 Mercedes E63 wagon, right?
Ooh.
That's rare, right? I mean, come on, a 500 horsepower, naturally aspirated wagon. And I'm like, you know what? And I bought this thing so right and had the right mileage. And it was the white on beige interior. And I'm like, I'm going to sell this car, even though this was not a car at all that my dealership typically sold. But I was going to gross the crap out of this thing. And I held on to it. And, well, we'll get into it. But let's get into it. You never
did celebrate a birthday?
You never
Yeah.
did. You never did.
No,
Did you?
No. Half birthdays are bad, much less full birthdays.
Half birthdays.
My kids celebrate half birthdays at school.
I think there's some used car managers that still celebrate half birthdays.
You know, when your birthday falls in the summer, you don't get to have birthday parties at school, so they give you a half birthday.
Well, I find we use the same excuse on some of our cars.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I love finding. We're gonna find these great rabbit holes with you, because I did the exact same thing. I had this E63 rear wheel drive 500 horsepower family monster, and I told myself, like, I bought it in January, and what did I do? I said, "Oh, this is a summer car. I'm gonna hold on to it." Right. Sell it in the summer, you know. But yeah, you're right. You got to celebrate half birthdays sometimes. No, that's okay. So our first topic today is just understanding and calculating the true cost. And I know you got tons of thoughts. I've seen you post on this before. I mean, you have talked about this before, right? You know, the true cost of aging inventory. How do you calculate that? What are some of your thoughts and opinions?
Wow. You know, well, obviously there's, again, what we call a holding cost. And you know, it's funny how many dealers actually pay attention to that, and it's not too many, but yet it's a real expense. Obviously there's a deeper formula to it, but let's just take your fixed expense, divide it by, you know, how many days of the week and how many cars, or days in a month and how many cars you got, and you know, give you a cost per day to have a car sitting there. You can equate that to your home budget, right? What's your mortgage, electric bill, gas bill, and you know, cable or whatever. The true necessities. Divide that by each day, and that's how much it costs for you to live in that house each day. It's a fixed cost. So there's no way around it unless you move out, right? So there's a fixed cost of doing business. So once you divide that per day, not only then how many slots you have, and you get a cost per day and of a product sitting there. Now that slot can range anywhere from 50 to or 30 to $100 a day, depending on facility and cash flow and everything like that. What are you paying for and what you're not? And you also got to consider interest and or depreciation in the back of the mind, but not part of the formula there. Sometimes interest, but so again, we default in our system $30 a day, but if the dealer knows their actual cost, we can plug that in there.
I'm
And
just
just
curious
this,
because you talk to so many. What would you say the percentage of people actually do know that?
they probably 25-30%.
So there's
Or here's
room
the
for
thing,
opportunity.
maybe half of them know what it is, but only 20-30% even think about it affecting. Because here, I tell you what, you put it in somebody's pay plan and then they'll think about it. Right.
Ain't that the truth?
So if you made a 2-pounder, $2,000 deal, but I backed up, $50 a day at the 50 days you let it sit here, it's $2,500 worth of holding costs. You lost 500. Then in it, what that one against your pay structure, you probably calculate it.
I think that would definitely happen really, really quick, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we've said this, I think a few times, and I have seen several posts about this before, is that the new used car manager needs to be more of a landlord, than sometimes a used car manager, and understand the rent factor on each one of these spots, and you can only have so many tenants.
And how good is that tenant? Yeah.
And how good is that tenant, right? And I find that analogy seems to maybe resonate, a bit more. But what are you seeing, especially right now, given the current economy and how things are changing? Like, how important is it still to, measure your holding cost? And are any of those formulas changing right now?
It's probably equally or more important now because of the fact that one, interest. If dealers are floor planning, paying a
Mhm.
bank to borrow money, I'm sure that interest rate might be, changing on them or more expensive. So that is a big factor. And consumer shopper counts down. Inventory levels are creeping up. The average age of cars out there in the market is up. And then the cost, the average cost per car is up. A lot of dealers, try to be in that 18-20 grand range, but are typically right now in the 25 to 30 grand average investment dollars. So if anything, it's even more important now as all those factors are in play. We're not getting people just walking in the door and buying whatever they can get their hands on at this point in time. Being a little bit more strategic in the higher dollar. And right now you're running into higher gas costs. As a matter of fact, I've seen some headlines that they think, gas is going to get back up to close to $100 a gallon, which is going to be $4 to $6 a gallon in our pocketbooks. And that's going to start impacting decisions. Shoot, I just had my wife text me the other day. She's like, it costs $70 to fill my car up. And, it's typically something she's not too worried about if it was $40-$50 and now it's $70.
No, it's really true. I noticed the same thing on my truck. I'm normally right around $50, and all of a sudden it was 65, almost $70. I was like, wait a second, that doesn't
what just happened?
Right now, I can't imagine your truck. Hey, so for everybody out there watching and listening, just in case you know, Jason's got one of those monster trucks that you don't even. It's got its own savings account for gas, right?
I don't call it a monster truck, but I do go line to line pretty much with those tires when I park.
I love the truck. All right, let's get okay. True holding cost, can it be any more important now than ever? And I think we, in a sense, we have to be proactive in calculating. I noticed, because inventory levels are coming back, as I say, it's kind of an offset between what the need is versus what availables in the market has started to shift. So I've seen marketing dollars now starting to pick up as well. Would you calculate marketing dollars into your holding costs as well?
No, because that's you can, and you can do multiples, I guess, things of holding costs. Because again, marketing dollars are flexible. I can cancel all my marketing dollars tomorrow. I can't cancel my mortgage payment or my rent on the property or my interest in my light bill and stuff like that. I can shut the lights off better, but there is a fixed expense, and marketing typically is not that. But I guess you can take your total budget and also slide that, divide that up too, and see the impact of it.
So you have your cost to sell, then you have your holding cost, and they're two separate expenses,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Is there anything else that should be included in the holding costs for anybody out there watching and listening that may want to try to calculate this out for themselves?
Well, I mean, again, each dealer is going to be different. You got the floor. Do we have the floor plan
Mhm.
expenses? Do we rent or own our buildings? Stuff like that. But obviously, even if you own your building, you're paying property tax on some of that. So each one's going to be a little bit different. If they want to reach out, we can get you some formulas that'll break it down. NCM has a great. If you Google NCM, holding cost calculation, though, there's a breakdown that way. We could send you a similar copy of that, but yeah, it's going to fluctuate. But again, the hardest part is just get them to understand how it impacts them. But because
Yeah.
it's not coming out of their check, they might figure it out, but they go, okay. And
Have
that's
you
about it.
seen anybody try to enroll that, like roll that into their pay structure? Because I'm a big fan of like if I want my team's goals to be in line with my goals, then their pay structures need to be in line with those goals as well.
But I guess if one of the managers are getting paid on total and net, not gross, right?
Mhm.
So whatever's left at the end of the month after we do pay rent and more, if somebody's paid on that, then I guess it would. But the normal used car managers that's managing used car inventory, or even lead managers that are managing leads, aren't worried about that. So um, I guess the people making the decisions typically on every day, every car probably aren't in those type of pay structures.
But when you are paying attention, you can see some insanely big results, and it's little things over a course of period of time. In fact, you posted something today, so the timing couldn't be
Yeah,
better.
I didn't know what
All
the
right,
topic was, so perfect.
we didn't even know we were getting into this, and you'd already posted, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this timing's perfect!" Right? But tell us the story, of this dealership, because I think that really does show, the difference in when you start to pay attention to this and what you can actually achieve at it when it's become a real number for you.
Yeah, so year over year in our system, we can go year back, and what I was looking at is, and I'm 99% sure on these numbers, but the dealer was carrying 244 units
Okay.
a year
Decent
ago
amount.
on this
That's a lot.
date,
Yeah.
and was selling, I think it was 54 or 56 units in a 2 week period. So if
Okay.
it was 56, that put them on pace to sell, what would that be, 112
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
244 in stock. Fast forward to now, he's selling 58, which isn't up much, 2 units up, but doing it with 144 units instead of 244 units. So there's 100 less units selling the same amount of cars. So year to year, when you say, hey, last August we sold 112 cars and we're still on pace to sell 112 cars, we're really not improving. But when you look at what it took to sell those, the dollars that it took to sell those, at 100 less cars, and their average investment last year was 27 grand. Easy
Yeah.
math.
Yeah.
27 grand times 100 is 2.7 million. The current average investment's 24 grand. If you wanted to take it off of the current investment of 24 grand times 100 is 2.4 million. So they're selling the same amount of cars with 2.4 million in the bank, essentially. So,
It's
there's
huge.
been a time I've asked the dealer, where's that money? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? It's got to be somewhere. If it's not in floor plan savings, it had to come in the bank somewhere. You didn't, where to go.
Oh,
And
so
so,
you mean that new boat I bought? Wait a second.
yeah,
Condo that's in Mexico? No, sorry.
yeah,
Anyway, go ahead,
exactly.
go ahead.
Well, even at that, and not that this did happen. As a matter of fact, our gross has gone up. But even if you said, yeah, and we're selling the same amount of cars, and our gross went down 300 a copy. Well,
Yeah.
again, do 300 a copy times 100 plus units, and then add the 2.5 or whatever back into that equation. Your gross did not go down. It actually went up with that 2.5 million of savings. So the other point that I want to, and then a little bit of research, matter of fact, I'll just do it on the calculator here. Back a year ago, the average age to sell, because think about this, holding costs, when we first started looking at it, we would take the 100 cars they have. Okay. Each car got a $50, let's say $50 a day holding cost expense. A 10-day old car had $500, so forth. We sum that all up and then averaged it out by how many cars are on their lot to give them their holding costs of their current inventory. Wasn't a while down the road, 6, 8, 12 months down the road, I'm like, hold on a second. Holding cost doesn't stop until you sell the car.
That's
So
correct.
not only should we look at our current holding costs, let's look at our sold holding cost. So back a year ago, their average age to sell was, let's say, is 62, but let's round it to this 60 days. And if you take 60 days to sell a car and you times that by $50 a day, that's $3,000
There goes
a
your gross.
car on average. Okay. And again, if you times that by the 244 cars they had in stock, just for equal math, $732,000. Okay. Now let's take that another step. $50 a day times 60 days to sell a car. And again, at that point in time, they're selling 112 cars. That was 336,000. So if you just want to look at their sales alone, 336,000. All right. Now you take it in today's equation again. They're selling cars now at 36 days.
Yeah, so
You take
their turn's fundamentally changed,
36 times
right?
50. Yep. Again, times 112 cars. Let's say they're selling the same 201,000. So they just saved about $130,000 in holding costs in this month.
Yes.
Okay. So not only are they doing it on 2.4 to 2.7 million less inventory, they just saved another $130,000 in that holding cost expense.
And look, let's talk about some of the things that you can do with that, right? I mean, when you're able to free up that kind of capital, and this is maybe the ownership hat coming back on. There's a lot of things I can do, when I'm able to free up that kind of capital, and where we can invest that, who we can invest it in. Is it
Marketing, like you were saying before?
I can invest into the marketing. I can invest into the people. I can invest into some of my technology stack. I can invest it into better customer experiences, either online or at the dealership, or even after the sales.
Or gas for your plane.
For my plane,
Yeah.
the condo in Mexico. The condo in Mexico. I will say, and that is one thing you saw during the pandemic, right? Like holding costs went from like here to like here's super, super fast. It's because we just weren't holding that much, and then we were turning way, way, way faster. And I love the fact you're like, well, where did that money go? I will say a good chunk of my dealer principal friends did purchase something new. Maybe a new big A-class RV.
Hey, they got to keep the economy going, right?
Another dealership. So
Exactly.
let's go into kind of our next topic is around kind of like strategies around minimizing some of the holding cost, right? Because I think we've done a good job up to this point. If you're watching and listening, I think we've done a good job of kind of identifying the holding cost and the importance of you now being the landlord, to your lot, and understanding what the real cost of keeping inventory is, and how that can affect your buying capabilities to continue to bring more inventory. Because that's another thing too we could have done, just reinvest into the inventory as well, right? But let's talk about how we can kind of minimize some of those holding costs and some of the ideas and strategies you have around that.
Well, I guess again, wrap your mind around what you're really managing. Let's imagine you're a mom and pop 5 and dime store, and you got all these products all over the shelves. Okay. And the only way you can put more products on your shelf is to sell more products, sell 2, buy 2 more to replace it, and move forward. And so you could either, let's say everything's all an equal price, but you could sell one item and make X amount of dollars, let's say $10, or you could sell 2 for $5. It's the same $10. But you also know that now I get to buy 2 more products and do it again. But not only that, every 2 items, let's say you make an extra $3. And somebody waiting in line and picking up a piece of a bubblegum package or something, or some candy bar for their kid, right? So for every 2 transactions, you've added another 30% revenue in a candy bar or what have you for your kids while you're waiting in line. So would you be that mom and pop that sells 1 item a day, or do you want to be that and make $10, or do you want to be that mom and pop store that's selling 3 items a day, right? Because every other item I'm grabbing another item for $3 and adding some added revenue. So again, they equate that to is obviously every opportunity. The sooner you get off that car, the sooner you get to replace that spot, and you do it again, right? If I'm already going to be paying, and just recycle that spot, you can't put another car in that spot until that one sells. So if I can do 2 cars at $1,500 instead of 1 at $3, if I can do 2 cars in 60 days instead of 1 at 60 days, and every car on average makes 12 to 2 grand in back end, right?
Yes.
Um, that's another two of those. It's another two trade opportunities, right? It's another two opportunities to get them back in my service lane to do more business with me. So it's the compounding interest and compounding factors of what I call like a lot legacy, right? So how many branches off of that sale can I get? Can I get a trade that I can make the money up on? Can I get some F&I? Can I get them back in service? And so there's just that legacy. And so to minimize holding costs is just mean turn it faster. But here's the caveat with that too is I'm not telling you to drop your prices, make up your gross and volume and all these other aspects of your business. It's do it with gross too. And the best time to make the most money is when it's fresh. So with our dealers, our strategy is just to increase the amount of cars you sell in the first 30 days. And what I found over 18 years of helping with inventory management, the top stores are be turning 65 to 80% of their sales in the first 30 days.
Yes.
Okay. Cutting off that holding cost. Again, being able to take a car, move it out of the slot, replace it with another one, move it out of the slot, grab some F&I, grab a trade, move it out of the slot, do it again.
Business. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And so if you want to just and that's where it's important to look at, not it is a true sold turn. What I mean by that, most inventory management tools are going to look at turn as and what that's calculated off of is your average age of your current inventory.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the biggest ones out there would say, okay, your turn is at 12. Well, all that has no impact on your sale rate. It just has to do with the average age of your current inventory.
Mm-hmm.
If your average age is 30, you'll be at 12 turns. The bad thing is that can be manipulated overnight. You can drop 10 one-day-old cars into that system, and now your average age goes from 30 to 27. Your turn goes from 10 to 12 or 12 to 15, and it looks like you're doing better when you're not. And so, again, the clock doesn't stop till you sell it. The sooner you can drive that average age down, right, the average age of selling down into the 20s and have 60, 70, 80% of your sales in the first 30 days, that's how you're going to maintain or maximize your gross profit. And I say maintain is,
while still minimizing your holding expense.
Yeah, because it all depends on, you can't say, well, my gross didn't go up because when I sold more fresh cars. It all depends on how you bought them. So if you just go step up and just buy a bunch of cars at a high dollar, then yeah, still struggle with gross. But even at that, if you go now, the cars are back to being a depreciating asset.
Yes.
Right. And the sooner you get off the depreciating asset, the better. And regardless if you bought it at 80% cost to market or 100% cost to market, the sooner you get to that sale price, the better. I was just at a store today locally, and he had a car price at 107%.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
which for all intents and purposes would throw a red flag. Yep, I get it.
Correct. But then I went and looked at where he had it priced previously, which was $3,000 higher a month ago. So it was like $50,500 is where he had it a month ago. Right now he's at $47,000. So $47,000, he's at 107.
Yep.
I plugged in his old price of $50,500 because back then it was 104% of the market. $50,500 was,
and that's how things are changing right now. Yeah.
I plugged it in now; it's 111. So I said the market moved 7% in less than a month. At this time, his cost to market was 98%. So I said, really? So then when you owned it, your cost market was 92, not 98. It moved, or actually 91. It would have been 91, 7% swing in the market. So if he's owned it at 98 now, he owned it at 91 then.
Yep.
So that's what I asked him. I said, hey, let's just say, because he didn't have our system, I can't tell it, but in our system we can. Let's say your average car leaves your lot at 98%. Would it have been better to sell it now that you own it at 98 and you sell it at 98, or would it have been better back then, a month ago, when you owned it at 91 to sell it at 98, right? And so you would have made that 7% then. It's just you got to get to that price sooner. And again, that's that's where I'm missing, right? And I'm like, exactly.
It's all about time. It's the one thing we never get more of, right? And once those vehicles hit the lot, the ticker's ticking. And there are still ways to, like you said, continue to maintain gross, all right, but minimize holding. I understand there are ways that we can fudge the number, right? But if we're consistently focusing on strategies that are built around getting vehicles out within that 30-day window, right? And I think that's what it is. It's a stepping stone of a strategy, right? It's like, okay, this
Mhm.
this is our ultimate goal is 30 days. Now, what happens after 30 days, and what actions are taken, all right, to continue to move? Because to your point, I would rather have just been at 100% at the 91, all right, moved it off the lot, and versus now waiting. And yes, it's crazy. I mean, this must have been a specific vehicle for it to fluctuate 7% over in a single month. There must have been something specific about that vehicle, or maybe incentives kicked in. It's a newer vehicle, stuff like that. So now all of a sudden, a new version of the vehicle has got a $10,000 discount on it or whatever, and that happens. That happens in our industry all the time, right? So I mean, I think it's this.
Well, here's the problem. It did in the
You know
last
what
couple of
happened?
years. It didn't because new cars weren't there to have $5,000 rebates
Exactly.
on them. Now that and so we didn't have to worry about, let's say now 22 or 23, 2022,
Mhm.
2021, because rebates weren't on new and there's hardly any new anyways. So they weren't depreciating as fast as they are now. Yeah, it was a 2022. Matter of fact, it was a Mercedes story because there was a qualification that he has to have a certain amount for a certified program. If he doesn't trade for those in by lease returns, he's got to go buy them. And that's the
Yes.
thing. Doesn't lease a lot. He gets two or three, but he needs 20 cars. So he goes buys in these 16s and he has to own them high at 91%. So then he tries to price it up at 104 because, trying to make some money when he, like to
Mhm.
your point, should have just priced it at 100 day one and been to 98 and 90, 95 pretty quick and got off of while there's still meat on the bone.
Yeah.
That's this front end gross. That's even, again, calculating the holding cost because this
Oh,
car
exactly. The cost
was,
of
I want to
advertising,
say,
everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was 50, at least 50 days old because we're looking at his 46 to 60 bucket. So I think it was 50 something days old. And again, at $50 a day, there's 2,500 right there.
Mhm.
That got wasted too. So now his 107, and owning it at 98, and he's trying to protect that whatever 10% spread.
Well, see, that's the other thing too is um, some of the best used car operators I've ever worked with are slow to accept their successes, but quick to accept their failures. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the one key trait I think I found in some of the best operators I've worked with in the past is that they are super quick to accept the fact that I was wrong. But I'm going to learn from that. And this is how it's going to change the strategy moving forward, because I think it is too easy for us to sometimes fall in love. I've fallen in love, like I said, my '07 E63 wagon. I knew I was going to gross on that thing, but with holding costs 6 months into it, I bought it in the winter. I'm going to wait till the summer because it's a summer car. I can't imagine what I lost on it if I actually sat down and did
Yeah.
the expense, right?
Well, not only that, it's just not only that car. Let's say it sat there for 90 days.
Yep.
Could you have turned two other cars in that same window of time, right? 30 on that one, two more 30s. And then those are averaging two front, 15 back, and there's another, whatever, $7,000, not including any kind of service or trade in work. Trade in, you could have got service work, you could have got on the trades and the service customer back in the door. So the compounding, again, what I call lot legacy, though, those are those roots and the family tree of that impact that didn't happen. Because here's the other
I
sad
love the
thing:
fact
that's
that
that's
visually.
probably a one-off car
Mhm.
that you're waiting for that right buyer.
Yep.
And the other one-off I mean by that is you have one shot to probably make some gross on it, and that's the front end because somebody probably drove 4 hours away to get it, didn't want to
Yep.
drag their trade, already talked to their bank because they didn't want to drive 4 hours without having their financing lined up. So more light, and they never coming back for service.
Yep.
So you held out on that one car to get that one-off customer that is a one-off shot anyways because they drove 2 or 3, 4 hours. I've been looking for one of these that are all over the place and bought it when you finally priced it cheap enough for them to drive 4 hours to come get it.
Well, and it's funny you say that because it's a perfect segue into our last topic. Look, I've done it. I made the mistake. I've already talked about it. I've used my gut feelings a few times than I should probably admit that I've done it. But I've used my gut, and for the longest time, up until I would say 2010, and kind of going into more inventory analytic systems, everything was kind of based off my gut feelings, and the managers I worked for, the managers that worked for me, a lot of that did, even the way I hired them actually was based on their experience and some of their gut feelings. That's not necessarily the case anymore. So, I think our next topic is leveraging inventory aging analytics, right, for more data driven, informed decisions. It's like we have some amazing data at our fingertips. What should we be looking at to make better informed decisions, Jason?
Well, I can only tell you the kind of way we approach it. First and foremost, I'm looking at my lot. How are things moving around before I worry about market, competitive set, auction data? I'm going to look at this car within my profile. Okay. What I mean by that, we do have a score. We call it WTF score for work the facts, but you could look at your inventory this way too. Is here, let's say for an example, uh, let's say it's a 2020 large pickup truck, Ford F-150, 40 grand, with 30,000 miles.
Sure.
Look at your current sale rates on 2018s. So our scoring is going to look at a different metrics. Like, are you heavy or light in that year? So let's say you're heavy in that year. What about large pickup trucks? How are they moving off your lot? Well, you know what? They're getting aged, so we're heavy in trucks. All right, so it's an 18 that we're heavy in. It's a truck we're heavy in. What about the $40,000 cars? How are they moving? Are they slow because the interest rates being higher? Yeah, matter of fact, those are. So you're heavy in that year. You're heavy in that segment. You're heavy in the same price point. You haven't changed the price in 10 days. You haven't had a lead in 7 days. You might have 3 or 4 leads you haven't talked to in 3 days. It's miley, okay, versus or too low miles. That's the other equation we look at.
Yes.
We like say anything less than 8,000 miles a year is low miles. And the reason why I would red flag that is maybe I'm too proud, too long on a low mile car. Like you said, that gut instinct. Yeah, but it's got half the miles of the market. Well, our customers are willing to pay up for it. Maybe that budget's would like to have it, but they're not going to stretch the extra $50 a month to buy your miles.
That's true.
So no. So is it miley or under miles? Because sometimes if it's miley, we're not aggressive enough. How is my ROI? Am I making 2% ROI, 5% ROI after holding cost? How is the ROI? Even though it's a $2,000 markup, and after holding cost, I might only be sitting at $1,800 or $1,800 of holding costs and $200 profit. So I think you look internally first and get a profile of how this car matches what's happening on your lot to go, okay, this thing's got. And a matter of fact, another thing we look at is what we call an investment risk score. And we just don't compare that 40 grand to your current average investment of 25 grand, because that means, hey, it's 15 grand higher than my current investment. That's a bad thing.
Exactly.
But if I actually look at, well, I don't know, large pickup trucks sell at 38 grand and F-150s sell at 35 grand and 2020s sell at, 27 grand, and kind of give more of a investment risk profile to similar vehicles instead of just your average. I think that's just kind of another, I guess, a deeper dive of how that dollar compares to the average on your overall, like a comparable average instead of just your overall average. So again, I would be weighting in things like that into my equation on which, once I find a problem on my lot, and again, we're talking about holding costs. Let's say my inventory is starting to age and it's costing me more money, both in depreciation and holding cost. You got to find the cars causing those problems in that 46 to 60 or 60 plus bucket. I'm going to be weighing in those type of scenarios. Am I heavy in that year? Am I heavy in the segment? Heavy in the price point? Heavy in that miles or make? Do I have any leads? When's the last time I changed the price? Is it converting online? Do I have leads no one's contacting? Is it low mile, high miles? Am I too proud, too long, or not aggressive enough on those miles? And then take that investment risk scenario and say, okay, it's 20 grand higher even to comparables that sell off my lot. On top of it, then use that information to go look at market and book out and auction data and stuff to make a deeper dive. But again, holding cost is yours. It's not the dealer down the street. It's not the Honda store that holds the record. So don't compare your holding cost and risk of that holding cost to just the market data. You can't. You got to figure out how it is impacting your lot.
Well, and it is impacting your lot, and I love the strategy that you just kind of laid out. I've said it many times in many other podcasts. I think one of the things used car dealerships are struggling with right now is an identity crisis. They don't necessarily know what or who or what they are, right? And using data like that allows me to really identify the data's there. Like if I sift through it and I take the time to actually invest into it, it will tell me what my identity should be. Maybe I should, be the 2017 to 2019 minivan superstore that's under $30,000. It's like, and I can own that identity. I find too often that even though the data is there, we try to be everything to everybody,
Yeah.
and I must keep a little bit of everything so I can make everyone happy. But this is not a buffet.
And
Where
that's what happens when you look at market data.
yeah,
Your Ford store seeing these Kias leave, and you're like, oh, I can dip in that Kia market, which you can to some extent, but again, it depends. I mean, if it's higher than your current customer profile, if your
mhm.
leads are higher percentage of your leads are on compact SUVs and not intermediate SUVs over 35 grand, and you just went and bought some Tellurides because they're selling right, great in the market, well, you just cost yourself some money
Well, it's an
because
investment risk, right?
that's not your profile. Not
Yeah.
that you can't sell a Kia to Ford. Ford customers are in your market. It's just your market's more of a 25 grand buyer and not a 35 grand buyer. So yeah, you got to have that profile. But this all goes back into kind of this show, um,
Mhm.
the up bus. What are you going to get leads on it based on your current profile? Do you have ups? Do you have similar vehicle or similar customers on sold cars that you could transition to this car if you're not getting leads on it? But again, that's your profile. Your customer, not just your cars, but where your customers land, age and segment price, or not age, but price and segment. What percentage of your leads are sitting on 35 to 40 grand large pickup trucks? How many cars do you have there? One of the things that we look at is, let's say you have 40 trucks in stock that are large pickup trucks, 35 to 40 grand. You have 40 leads sitting in that segment, but 2 trucks to sell them. So you only have 2 trucks to sell to 40. Buy some more of those because, again, it goes back to holding costs. You've already got an active audience. You got 40 people. Day one, you don't have to wait for photos and descriptions. You get
I
them
don't
day
have to
one.
spend any marketing,
You've
Jason.
got a
It's
database of 10
right there.
customers looking for that similar truck that you can call today and switch to them, minimizing that holding cost.
And you know what? I think some of the most proactive dealers out there are looking at that. I mean, I would be, looking at what's currently at my auction, knowing that I got 2 of these trucks, I got 40 leads on them. All right, and I got 38 people that are telling me they're in market for that. If I'm just sitting up calling them and say, "Look, I'm looking at this auction. Is this something you'd be interested in?" Like, I mean, just being proactive, like that. But again, I can only be proactive as much as the data allows me or shows me I can be proactive. We are
Or
relying
your gut. Or your gut, right?
or the gut, or get to the gut. Well, don't do that. Look, I know, we're getting towards the tail end of our conversation today. And for anybody out there watching and listening that has something that's turning its birthday, hopefully not, no, but is having some aging issues, what would be a final thought or a final, recommendation of and something that they can take action right now to make adjustments?
Again, example, this dealer that I just came and visit from, he had over 25% over 60 days old age.
Mhm.
The big problem was I think he had over 30% in his 30 to 60 buckets, the middle bucket.
Mhm.
That's a bucket. If you have an aging problem, which he did, I'd want less than 20% of my investment dollars sitting there and make sure I'm exceeding my sale rate on those age buckets. So you need to really squeeze off and not allow any more cars to bleed through an age. At that time, he had 8 and 5. He had 860 to 75 days old and 5 more. So he had about 13 cars over 60 days old.
Yeah.
So that goal for that dealer is squeeze off that middle bucket. Don't add to the 13. And that might take a month or so to get those sale rates going. And then figure out the game plan while you're doing that, how fast you want to get off those 13. Do you want to do it all in 1 month, rip the Band-Aid off, or spread it out over 2 months? But realize the longer you spread that out, 2-3 months to get off that, that's how long your gross is going to suffer. So if you take a month just to stop the bleed through, and then you decide to take 3 months to pace out 13 cars, you're going to suffer 3 to 4 months with maximizing your gross. And that's usually where dealers start tapping out. Man, our inventory's clean, but man, we took a beating in our gross. Let's get back to selling cars and making money. And they go back to old habits because now they
Yeah.
got some breathing room. And that's where you don't want to change that. So that's one. But two, this dealer, I think there's 16 units sitting in his 45 to 60.
Yes.
16 units. And when I looked at it, again, we want to stop the bleed through, that's not a bad thing, the 16 units. Again, he had 13 over. The bad thing was over the last 2 weeks, he sold none out of that bucket, 0. So I showed that to him. I said, okay, if you don't increase your sale rate on your 46 to 60, what's going to happen? We're going to add to that 13. Matter of fact, one of them is going to flip tomorrow because it was already 60 days old and it's going to go to 61 plus. So, you've got to be aware of current carry rate to sale rate. I like looking at your last 2 weeks of sales. So let's just say he had 16 units there, and let's just say he sold 4 out in the last 2 weeks out of that bucket.
Not bad. There we go. We're heading in the right direction.
Yeah. If I want to turn my inventory each month, if I sold 4 in 2 weeks, that would put me on pace to sell 8 in 4 weeks. 4 in 2 weeks means I'm selling 8 in 4 weeks at that pace with 16 in stock. He still would have had 8 more bleeding through. My point is, you need to know those numbers. And then once you recognize that's a problem, go dig into those cars, figure out what cars are causing those problems. Again, I'm going to look at, I want to find the cars I'm heavy in a year, heavy segment, heavy in price point, age bucket I'm not selling enough of, might be my lead, converting online, but I haven't had a lead in 7 days and I got 3 leads I haven't contacted in 3 days. Those are the cars I'm going to attack first and go, okay, based on my profile, these are my issues. Then I pivot to market data and start moving them and try to figure out what I got to do to get these things moving. And then again, compare your pricing more like how they move off of your lot historically versus just how, again, I'm at a Mercedes store. Do I really care where the Hyundai store's pricing their 2022 Mercedes at? I do, but I should be able to get a little bit more for it. So
it's your clients, it's your database. But I like that, a very strong, aggressive, consistently executed 30 to 60 day strategy, and it's consistent execution of that strategy. It's going to eliminate the 60 plus.
Yeah, right? But the other important part about this is as you're doing this, replenish fresh inventory. And then don't try to make up your gross on the fresh cars. Because then as these guys are weeding out of these aged cars and losing money, well, guess what they do? They go ask a premium for their fresh stuff. Well, I got to make up my money somewhere. I got to give it a shot because I'm losing money down here. Well, all that does is compound the problem. Those cars are going to bleed through in age because they're not priced to sell. Again, if you're selling at 98%, you got your fresh stuff at 103. One of the things I ask a dealer that's an aha moment for him is, when's the best time to make the most money in a car? When it's fresh. Okay.
Exactly. We all know.
Then I ask them the next question. Do you want to increase or decrease the odds of it selling while it's fresh? Well, I want to increase it. Okay, well, price at 105% of market. Are you increasing or decreasing the odds of it selling while it's fresh? Oh,
decreasing, obviously.
You're decreasing it. Yeah. So it's counterintuitive. We're going to try to make up our gross. I always say the managers try to control.
You mean we say one thing and mean another? What?
Yeah.
No.
The managers that try to control gross by managing gross ends up costing themselves gross. They try to control it, saying, "Hey, I'll make up my money on my fresh stuff." So they're trying to manage that money. They're saying, "Hey, I'm gonna raise my price so I can control my gross and try to get it." And they end up costing themselves gross because, again, those cars end up bleeding through and just adding to the problem. They get rid of these 8 more come in.
Just a domino effect. Just creates a domino effect, guys.
So job security, right?
if you're watching and listening right now, you heard it. Okay, it's consistency in your strategy. Definitely well documented. 30-day strategy, aggressive 30 to 60-day strategy, and by the time we're over 60, really some one-on-one figuring out, deep dive, what's going on. But it's consistency in the way we execute those, not hopes and prayers on the first one so that we can fix the other one. Consistency is going to be key here, guys. Hey, thanks for so much, Jason, for taking the time to jam with me today. Loving, guys, the Up Bus series. Feel free to check this out. All right. I believe it's theupbus.com. All right. Check out that website. More great content coming. Thank you so much for your time. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Up Bus Podcast with your hosts, Jason Harris and Jason Rice. To stay up to date with all our content, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Happy podcasting.